Political parties emerged in the process of creating the United States. Political factions or parties began to form during the struggle over ratification of the Federal Constitution of 1787. Friction between them increased as attention shifted from the creation of a new federal government to the question of how powerful the federal government would be. The Federalists, led by Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton, wanted a strong central government, while the Anti-Federalists, led by Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson, advocated states' rights instead of centralized power. Federalists coalesced around the commercial sector of the country, while their opponents derived their strength from those favoring an agrarian society. The ensuing partisan battles led George Washington to warn of baneful effects of the spirit of party. In his farewell address as President of the United States, George Washington, on September 19, 1796, said, "Let me now take a more comprehensive view and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effects of the spirit of party generally." James Madison, the father of the Constitution of the United States, who born on 1751 and died in 1838. In Orange County, Virginia, planter shown in this portrait, the portrait we can see in Charles Willson Peale, the miniature portrait on ivory in the Library of Congress. We can view that. Was a strong proponent of strong central government to replace the Articles of Confederation. Often credited with being the father of the Constitution of 1787, Madison established the Jeffersonian Republican Party with Thomas Jefferson, and in 1809 succeeded him as President of the United States. A letter was written by James Madison to Thomas Jefferson on December 8, 1788. The manuscript we can see in the Library of Congress in the Thomas Jefferson's papers under digital number ID US 0088 about the development of political factions and parties. Opponents, anti-federalists and supporters, federalists of the new constitution began to coalesce into political factions. In Virginia, anti-federalists led by Patrick Henry, who was born in 1736 and died in 1799, defeated James Madison's election to the Senate and forced him into a campaign for the House of Representatives against a strong anti-federalist, James Monroe, 1758 to 1831. Later, the fifth president. The rapid evolution of political parties from factions was an inventive American response to political conflict. On June 8, 1789, the New York Daily Advertiser has published In June 12, 1789, in the Serial and Government Publication Division, which can be seen in the Library of Congress, the speech in Congress of James Madison's speech. Madison calls for amending the Constitution. Although James Madison had opposed early amendments to the federal Constitution, he hoped to derail the growing political demand for major constitutional changes by offering a Bill of Rights as a diversion of a tub for a whale, a reference to a story by Jonathan Swift in which a tub is tossed to a whale to keep it from wrecking a boat. Roger Sherman, in the draft report of a special committee of Congress, which was produced on July 21, 1789, the manuscript can be seen in James Madison Papers in the Library of Congress, in which Roger Sherman, a congressman, 1721 and 1793, who was elected from Connecticut and argued in a special congressional committee appointed on July 21, 1789, that any amendments should be appended to the Constitution. On August 19, 1789, the House of Representatives finally adopted Sherman's argument that to insert them into the text would be too confusing and voted instead to add the amendments by a way of supplement. This list of proposed amendments in Sherman's writing is probably a draft of a report by a committee on which he served. It differs markedly from the amendments finally proposed and sent to the states. As such, it provides valuable insights into the creation of the Bill of Rights. A letter from Samuel Johnston to James Madison, dispatched on July 8, 1789. The manuscript can be seen in James Madison Papers. In these letters, the support for amendments as political diversions is endorsed. Despite North Carolina's refusal to ratify the Constitution without the addition of amendments, the state's governor, Samuel Johnson, 1733-1816, opposed any material alteration to the Constitution, but advocated for a flourish and dressing, such as a pompous Declaration of Rights. Johnston was one of the many Federalists who supported amendments for personal liberties only as a political tactic to fend off more substantive changes in federal papers. Congress of the United States and the House of the Representatives, a report from the Committee of the 11, New York, Thomas Greenleaf, 1789, in the Library of Congress, can be viewed about amending the body of the Constitution. A committee of the House of Representatives appointed by James Madison originally envisioned that amendments on individual rights would be incorporated in the body of the Constitution and appended as a supplement. This July 28, 1789, committee report presented by John Winning, 1758 to 1802, of Delaware, clearly shows the incorporation plan with the rights scattered throughout the Constitution. A letter from Richard Peters to James Madison on July 5, 1789, The manuscript James Madison papers highlights, and that can be seen in the Library of Congress, about warning of prematurely amending Constitution. Richard Peters, 1743-1828, a Pennsylvania assemblyman and a former delegate to the Continental Congress, warned James Madison about offering amendments to the machine before it is known whether it wants any. Peters, like many supporters of the Constitution, continued to oppose the adoption of a federal Bill of Rights. William Macaulay Journal, August 25, 1789. The manuscript is viewed in the Library of Congress. About Senate treats amendments contemptuously. Many strong supporters of the federal Constitution saw no need to add a Bill of Rights, arguing that individual rights were already protected by the Constitution, common law and state constitutions. William Macaulay, 1737 to 1804, a senator from Pennsylvania, reported that the proposed amendments were treated contemptuously by senators, but nevertheless the Senate agreed to consider them. A letter from George Washington to Marquis de la Luzerne, issued on August 10, 1790, George Washington papers, that was published and that is now be viewed in the Library of Congress. In this letter to the former French minister to the United States, Marquis de la Luzerne, 1741-1791, George Washington reported that despite the good deal of the warmth that marked the congressional debates over funding the Revolutionary War and the location of the national capital and the war debt, a compromise had been reached. About that, the federal government would assume all state and federal debts, and after a 10-year stay in Philadelphia, the capital would be located on the Potomac River near Washington's home at Mount Vernon. Congress embarked on board the ship Constitution of America bound to Conogocheck by way of Philadelphia in New York, 1790. In the Library of Congress, about location of capital suppers partisan bickering. In July 1790, Congress decided to move the capital of the federal government from New York to a new city to be built in the District of Columbia, created from parts of Maryland and Virginia, on the Potomac River. With a 10-year interim in Philadelphia, the location of the capital was part of a critical compromise over funding of national and state debts. The Compromise of 1790 became a focal point for the emerging Federalist and Republican partners. This print satires the profit opportunities presented by the traveling capital. William Macaulay, The Diary, 1789-1790. There is a manuscript can be seen in William Macaulay papers in the Manuscript Division, Library of Congress. About capital location which was negotiated. Pennsylvania Senator William Macaulay, who was born in 1737 and died in 1804 reported that Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton offered to place the permanent national capital in Philadelphia in exchange for Pennsylvania's vote to approve the federal assumption of state debts from the Revolutionary War. According to Macaulay, the Pennsylvania delegation turned down this offer. As a result, Hamilton consummated a deal with Virginia that led to the national capital being located on the Potomac River. Andrew Ellicott, plan of the city of Washington and the territory of Columbia, ceded by the states of Virginia and Maryland to the United States of America, and by them established as the seat of their government after the year MDCC, Boston, Samuel Hill, 1792, engraved map and geography and map division can be seen in the Library of Congress. About survey of the site for the federal city of Washington, an act for establishing the temporary and permanent seat of the government of the United States was signed into law on July 16, 1790. After giving cursory consideration to other locations, George Washington selected a site for the seat of the government with which he was very familiar. The banks of the Potomac River at the confluence of its eastern branch, just above his home at Mount Vernon. Andrew Ellicott, 1754-1820, the federal surveyor of the District of Columbia, prepared this plan in 1792 of what would become the District of Columbia, the outline of the city's grid system, and the location of the capital, the President's House, and the Mall are clearly visible in the picture, which can be viewed in the Library of Congress. George Isham Perkins, 1750 to 1820, there is a view of the suburbs of the city of Washington. In 1795, a quatraint prints and photographs division can be seen in the Library of Congress. About Georgetown, the suburb of the new federal city. Within a decade of deciding to move the new federal capital to the banks of the Potomac River, what became known as Washington, District of Columbia, began to emerge out of partisan politics and a tidal march. The federal city had just begun to take shape when the government moved here in 1800. This engraving provides a view of the waterfront at Georgetown, then a suburb of Washington. William Birch and Son, the Bank of the United States with the view of the third St. Philadelphia. From the city of Philadelphia in the state of Pennsylvania, North America, as it appeared in the year 1800, hand-colored engraving, Springland, Pennsylvania, and the William Birch and Son, 1800. The book is rare and special collections, divisions, presents in the Library of Congress. About the first Bank of the United States. Created by a 20-year federal charter on February 25, 1791, the Bank of the United States was a private corporation funded by stocks sold to the federal government and individuals. The same bank bill also established a mint for issuing uniform currency. The Bank of the United States remained a contentious constitutional and political issue for decades because opponents feared the centralized power of the national bank and opposed federal corporations. Alexander Hamilton, the draft report on the constitutionality of National Bank, on February 23, 1791, the manuscript Alexander Hamilton Papers highlights in the manuscript divisions in the Library of the Congress about partisan clash over creating a national bank. One of the early critical differences between Federalists and Republicans was a disagreement on the implied parts of the Constitution to allow for creation of national bank. Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson advocated a narrow construction of the Constitution that would have prohibited a national bank. Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton supported the bank with a broad interpretation of the Constitution's implied powers under the General Welfare Clause. The President Washington sided with Hamilton. William G. Jackman, engraving after a painting by L.W. Gibbs in the New York D. Appleton, 1857, prints and photographs revisions and can be seen in the Library of the Congress about Alexander Hamilton played major roles in the creation of the United States. He was an aide-de camp to George Washington during the Revolution, a member of the Continental Congress in 1782, 1783, and 1788, and the Constitutional Convention in 1787, and the first Secretary of the Treasury. In 1804, Aaron Burr killed Hamilton in a duel arising from ill will. After Federalist leader Hamilton supported Thomas Jefferson instead of Burr in the disputed election of 1801. Hamilton was killed by the Aaron Burr. Letter from George Washington to Alexander Hamilton on August 26, 1792. The manuscript that can be seen in George Washington papers in Manuscript Division, the Library of Congress, highlights the pictures. Washington tries to pacify the parties. As party lines were drawn in the new federal government, President George Washington tried to pacify the parties by addressing the chief protagonists, Alexander Hamilton, Secretary of the Treasury, and Thomas Jefferson, Secretary of State. Although both Hamilton and Jefferson promised to work together, the struggle between the Federalist and Republican parties continued unabated. James Madison, a candid state of politics, National Gazette, Philadelphia, on September 22, 1792, the Serial and Government Publication Division in the Library of Congress. Give understanding about Republican Party christened by James Madison. In September 1792, James Madison coined the term Republican Party in an essay, A Candid State of Parties, published in the National Gazette of Philadelphia. Although the Jeffersonian Republican Party did strengthen from the anti-federalists, no one had more claim to the authorship of the federal Constitution than did Madison, one of the founders of the Jeffersonian Republican Party. Letter from Pierce Butler to James Madison on June 26, 1795. The manuscript that is seen in James Madison papers in the Manuscript Division, Library of Congress, which shows the Jay's Treaty faced with British refusal to vacate system of Western frontier forts as well as honor neutral shipping rights. President George Washington sent Supreme Court Chief Justice John Jay, 1745-1829, to London in 1794. The resulting treaty, which failed to resolve the issue but prevented a war with Great Britain, was extremely unpopular with the Jeffersonian Republicans. The Treaty of Amity, Commerce, and Navigation was quickly labeled Jay's Treaty and became a lightning rod for the political parties and a point of contention between the President and Congress over funds for its implementation. His Excellency John Jay, the President of a Congress and Minister Plenipotentiary from Congress at Madrid, Spain, in portraits of generals, ministers, magistrates, members of Congress, and others who have rendered themselves illustrious in the revolution of the United States of North America. London are Wilkinson and J. Debord, May 1783, engraving after drawing by Pierre E. du Cimetière. In the book Special Collections Divisions in the Library of Congress, unveils John Jay, 1745-1829, a prominent New York nationalist and former president of the Continental Congress, was among the first to call for a national convention to replace or revise the Articles of Confederation. Jay was an outspoken advocate for the new Constitution and authored several of the Federalist essays. He served as first Chief Justice of the United States, 1789-1795. President Washington sent Jay to England in 1794 to negotiate a treaty which became known as Jay's Treaty. A letter from Thomas Jefferson to James Madison, September 21, 1795, a manuscript, James Madison Papers, that can be seen in the manuscript division in the Library of Congress, about a champion to challenge Alexander Hamilton. In this letter, Thomas Jefferson challenged James Madison to enter the pamphlet wars against his political rival Federalist Alexander Hamilton, whom he asserted is really a colossus to the anti-Republican Party. There is nobody but yourself who can meet him, urged Jefferson. Alexander Hamilton draft of George Washington's farewell address, 1796 manuscript, Alexander Hamilton Papers in the Library of Congress, tells about factional fighting after Washington's farewell. Despite George Washington's warning about the dangers of political factions or parties in his farewell address to the nation in 1796, the lack of consensus candidate to assume the presidency only intensified party struggles. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson led partisan political factions or parties into the national elections of 1796. Washington even sought advice from two opposing partisan leaders, Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. Displayed here is a draft of Washington's farewell address, which Hamilton helped write. Congressional Pugilistes, Congress Hall in Philadelphia, on February 15, 1798, Philadelphia. In 1798, etching the prints and photographs divisions in the Library of Congress. Congress was at odds. This prints captures the heated partisan debates in Congress between Vermont Jefferson's Republican representatives, Matthew Lyon, 1749 and 1822, and Connecticut's Federalist representatives, Roger Griswold, 1762-1812. They attacked each other with a can and fireplace tongs on the floor of the House of the Representatives on February 15, 1798. Griswold had accused Lyon of cowardice during the American Revolution, and Lyon represented by spitting tobacco and its juice in Griswold's face. Charles Balthazar, Julian Favret, de Saint-Mamin, George Washington, charcoal on tinted paper, 1800 CA, Prints and Photographs Divisions in the Library of Congress. The Commander-in-Chief George Washington, 1732-1799, a Virginia planter and veteran of America's frontier wars, was Revolutionary America's only commander of all military forces. Throughout the 8-year war for independence, his leadership during the Revolution led to his election as the first President of the United States in 1789-1797. James Thackeray, John Valence, Liberty, Friends, Peace, and the Ladies' Magazine and Repository of the Entertaining Knowledge, Philadelphia, W. Gibbons, 1792-1793, Marion S. Corson Collection. The book is rare and in the Special Collections Divisions in the Library of Congress. Disclose the Seeking Women's Rights struggle. American women such as Abigail Adams and Mercy Otis Warren hoped the American Revolution would lead to a more legal and political rights for women. During the post-revolutionary period, periodicals aimed directly at the women who emerged. The best known was the Ladies' Magazines and Repository of Entertaining Knowledge, founded in Philadelphia in 1792. In this engraving, a copy of Vindication of the Rights of Women, 1792, the cornerstone feminist document by Mary Wollstonecraft, 1715 and 1797, is presented to Lady Liberty. A letter from Abigail Adams to Elizabeth Smith Shaw Peabody on July 1979, manuscript Shaw Family Papers, Manuscript Division, Library of Congress, shows political rights of women asserted. In a letter to her sister Elizabeth Smith Shaw Peabody, 1750-1815, of Atkinson, New Hampshire, Abigail Adams, wife of John Adams, asserted the rights of the women to join the conduct of government, even if a woman does not hold the reins of government. A. Adams, engraving after a painting by Gilbert Stuart, New York, Johnson and Wilson and Company, between 1830 and 1860, Prints and Photographs Division, Library of Congress, shows a photograph of Abigail Smith Adams, 1744-1818, was an outspoken supporter of women's political, educational, and marital rights and a sage and savvy political advisor to her husband, John Adams, a revolutionary leader and second president of the United States. She was the mother of 6 children and managed the family farm and investments while serving as her husband's chief supporter and advisor. Letter from Abigail Adams to Elizabeth Smith Shaw Peabody for 1797, manuscript Shaw Family Papers, Manuscript Division, Library of Congress, also tells about Abigail Adams sees Adams-Jefferson administration as sign of unity. The usually politically astute Abigail Adams mistakenly believed that the election of Thomas Jefferson as John Adams vice president would serve as a bond of union between the Stuarts and Mr. Jefferson. I have no doubt will support the president. However, their rival political parties continued to clash throughout Adams' administration. The rivalry of Adams and Jefferson fully emerged in the bitterly partisan campaign of 1800. Letter from Abigail Adams to William Shaw, December 23, 1798, manuscript Shaw Family Papers, Manuscript Division, Library of Congress, uncovers political infighting and a war. With France, Abigail Adams, 1744-1818, wife of President John Adams, feared that political infighting was endangering the United States, which was engaged in an undeclared naval war with France. Jeffersonian Republicans strongly opposed this quasi-war with France, arguing that it strengthened commercial interests in Federalist strongholds. In this letter to her nephew William Shaw, 1778-1826, Adams saw hope in the response of the House of Representatives to the President's address to Congress. William Birch and Son, preparation of war to defend commerce from the city of Philadelphia and the state of the Pennsylvania, North America, as it appeared in the year 1800, hand-colored engraving, Springland, Pennsylvania, William Birch and Son, 1800, rare book and special collections division, Library of Congress. About ongoing declared naval war. During the administration of President John Adams, the United States was engaged in an ongoing undeclared naval war with France over neutral shipping rights. French naval vessels and privateers seized hundreds of American vessels, like the frigate Philadelphia, pictured here, while the United States struggled to build a navy capable of defending its commerce. Stop the Wheels of Government, illustration in William Cobbett. Peter Porcupine's Political Censor, our monthly review of the most interesting political occurrences related to the United States of America, Philadelphia, William Cobbett, April 1796, about special collection divisions. The book is available in the Library of the Congress, and the picture about that, linking Jeffersonian Republicans to the French Revolution. In 1792, political pamphleteer William Cobbett settled in Philadelphia and began writing pro-English and anti-Republican articles under the pseudonym Peter Porcupine. Cobbett once described Thomas Jefferson as a deist, a Frenchman in politics and mortality. And a man as much qualified to be president as I am to be an archbishop. Cobbett described in A Frenchman in Politics and Morality. James Gilray, The Life of the William Cobbett, written by himself in Number 8, London, published by Hannah Humphrey, 27 Street, James Street, September 29, 1809, hand-colored and engraved print, the Prints and Photographs Division, Library of Congress, about William Cobbett, satirized. William Cobbett, 1763-1835, English soldier turned political pamphleteer, fled London for the United States in 1792. Always a lightning rod for political passion, Cobbett returned to England in 1800 after being successfully sued for journalistic slander and libel in the States. In this later British cartoon series chronicling the colorful life of Cobbett, artist James Gilray depicts the pamphleteer surrounded by handwritten pages, engulfed in flames and beset by ghosts. A reflection of a letter from John Dawson to his constituents, Philadelphia, on July 19, 1789. and 1798, printed broadside in a book and special collection division in the Library of Congress that is available. Congress declares acts unconstitutional. Virginia Congressman John Dawson, 1762-1814, declared the Alien and Sedition Act an open violation of the First Amendment to the Constitution, passed by the Federalist-controlled Congress as America prepared for possible war with France. The Alien and Sedition Acts limited free speech by declaring public criticism of government officials to be seditious libel, punishable by imprisonment and fines. Dawson urged citizens to rely first on the courts to declare it unconstitutional, as well as to prepare to seek its repeal. Thomas Jefferson draft of Kentucky Resolutions, November 16, 1798. Manuscript Thomas Jefferson's Papers, Manuscript Division, Library of Congress. Shows the right of states to judge constitutionality of federal laws. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison secretly drafted the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions to counter a perceived threat to individual liberties from the Alien and Sedition Acts. Jefferson and Madison were particularly concerned with charges of sedition brought against the Republicans, critics of the federal government. These resolutions asserted the rights of the states to judge the constitutionality of federal laws. To the Senate and representatives of the United States in the Congress assembled, Poughkeepsie, New York, Nicholas Parr, 1798, broadside, rare book, and special collections division in the Library of Congress about the opposition to the Alien and Sedition Acts. The Alien and Sedition Acts were enacted by Federalists fearful of a violent overthrow of the government, as French refugees fled to the United States from revolutions in France and Haiti. The acts restricted immigration and made strong criticism of public officials illegal. Several newspaper publishers and writers were imprisoned for seditious writings. Many Americans opposed a federal sedition law, arguing that it violated the Constitution and also unconstitutionally infringed on the right of states to regulate free speech through slender laws. This petition to the United States Congress was part of a Republican Party effort to repeal the Alien and Sedition Acts. To the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States, who give the names are the hereunto subscribed, being citizens of the country of Albemarle in the state of Virginia, Albemarle County, Virginia, 1798, and the rare book and special collections divisions are available in the Library of the Congress about the opposition to Alien and Sedition Acts. The Alien and Sedition Acts restricted immigration and made strong criticism of public officials illegal. Several newspaper publishers and writers were imprisoned for seditious writings. Many Americans opposed a federal sedition law, arguing that it violated the Constitution and infringed on the right of states to regulate free speech through slender laws. This petition to the United States Congress was part of a Republican Party effort to repeal the Alien and Sedition Acts. In Virginia, to wit, in the House of the Delegates, Friday, December 21st, 1798, resolved that the General Assembly of Virginia doth unequivocally express a firm resolution. Richmond, 1798. Leaflet, rare book, and special collections division, Library of Congress. Virginia resolutions oppose Alien and Sedition laws. The Alien and Sedition Acts restricted immigration and made strong criticism of public officials illegal. Several newspaper publishers and writers were imprisoned. Many Americans opposed a federal sedition law, arguing that it violated the Constitution, the rights of the states to regulate free speech through slender laws. The awful crisis which has arrived must be left far Us All, a pamphlet in 1798. T. Nicholson has written, that is found in Rare Book and Special Collections Division, Library of Congress, about vindication of the constitutionality of Alliance and Sedition laws. A large minority in the Virginia legislature opposed the passage of the Virginia resolutions asserting a state's right to declare a federal law unconstitutional and specifically declaring the Alliance and Sedition laws unconstitutional. That group of states legislators published this statement as a vindication of the constitutionality of the Alliance and Sedition laws. Thomas Cooper, an account of the trial of Thomas Cooper of Northumberland on a charge of libel against the President of the United States, Philadelphia, John Bros, April 1800, in the Special Collections and the Book Library of Congress. After attacking the administration, the libel trial of Thomas Cooper, the Federalist President John Adams in print, Thomas Cooper, 1759-1839, political writer and ardent Republican, was tried for seditious libel against Adams before Federalist Supreme Court. Justice Samuel Chase, 1741-1811, in April 1800, Cooper was found guilty, fined, and imprisoned. Republican political leaders strongly criticized Justice Chase, and he was eventually impeached, though not convicted in 1804 after the Republicans won control of the government. Letter from James Monroe to Thomas Jefferson on September 15, 1800. The manuscript, Thomas Jefferson Papers, Manuscript Division, Library of Congress, about the Virginia Slave Rebellion, increases election year turmoil. In the midst of the high tensions surrounding a climactic presidential election, Virginia slaves led by Gabriel Prosser, 1775-1800, marched on Richmond, Virginia. Governor James Monroe notified Vice President and presidential candidates Thomas Jefferson that the most serious and formidable conspiracy of slaves had been clearly proved. Gabriel's insurrection led to harsh reprisals, including executions, deportations, and sales of slaves accused of rebellion. Ulster County Gazette, January 4, 1800, Kingston, New York, Samuel S. Freer and Son, newspaper, serial and government publication division, Library of the Congress, honoring George Washington at his death. Political harmony suffered a serious blow with the death of the nation's father figure, George Washington, on December 14, 1799. Residents of Ulster County, New York, were provided a detailed account of the Washington's death and the many events eulogizing America's fallen leader in this January 4, 1800 edition, one of only 2 copies in existence. This newspaper includes John Marshall's eulogy delivered before the House of Representatives. Marshall concluded his remarks with the now famous phrase, "First in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen." R. Packard, the first great Western empire of the United States of America, Albany, New York, 1812, wood engraving, prints and photographs division in the Library of the Congress, about celebrating the first great Western empire. This patriotic broadside celebrates the accomplishment of the United States from the adoption of the federal Constitution through the presidencies of George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison. The Temple of the Freedom, or the Federalist edifice, is supported by pillars of agriculture and commerce, while it boasts of the population of the 17th states in the United States. The political system and the political parties of the United States has a remarkable history, which we can study in the process of creating the Constitution of the Union of the America. The incidents and political events and the Civil War and the Federalist and Anti-Federalist struggle has endeavored the political party system, and we can differentiate in their struggles about the rights of the people of the United States to ensure the liberty of the peoples of the United States. So the political parties are the guarantor of the security of the rights of the peoples of the United States, and every state parliamentary system can be consolidated only with the political parties and the political system, which is totally be recognized only with political parties and their representing criteria.